How early do you think we should bring change management?
At the very beginning of the project, change is not just happening for your end users, they're happening for the project team as well.
How do you introduce yourself to
I
clients?
tend to introduce myself as a Workday expert, right? So I have a couple of tips, if it's okay to share a couple
Yeah,
of
of
things.
course. Let's do it. Hey, Tracy, how are you doing?
Hi, I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Welcome to Ask an Expert. You're actually my fifth guest, so I'm pretty excited. I'm getting more and more comfortable, so I know this episode will be fire. So I appreciate you joining me here today.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate the opportunity as well.
Of course, I think when we released an Ask an Expert, we were introduced on LinkedIn and then we chatted a little bit. And then I noticed how much experience you had in change management. And that's where I think that's one of the areas where I have the least experience. So I'm very excited about learning more about your experience. But for people who don't know you, Tracy, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Traci Cuthbertson, and I actually started my Workday career back in 2014. So I've been doing Workday consulting for over a decade now. And when I joined, I had an opportunity to join one of the smaller implementation partners. It was a boutique firm, and they were wanting to build a change management practice. So it was me and my director, and we basically built it from scratch. Neither one of us knew what we were doing, but we jumped in. But we did have the benefit of getting certified in core HCM. So particularly at that time, our partner required all of their consultants to be certified. And so while
Yeah.
we wasn't doing any configuration hands-on, we had that kind of foundational knowledge of the system. And so I did change management for a couple of years, building that practice. And then Workday released learning. And at that time, nobody at my firm knew what to do with learning. I had come from a learning and development background, so had been like an instructional designer and a trainer, etc. So I understood the language, I understood work learning management systems, had that exposure, and so I decided to take on the challenge of getting certified. Was one of the first consultants to be certified in learning, became one of the first product leads in learning. Did that for a couple of years, but really began to miss advisory work and change management work. So I had an opportunity to go with another partner firm. They were building their advisory practice as well.
Okay.
And so I had a chance to go and do change management. And in addition to that, I got exposed to testing, data conversion, did tenant reviews. I think sometimes they're called review and recommends. And so that really helped to broaden my knowledge in a lot of different ways. And so, today I have current certifications in HCM, learning, talent, and launch, and do change management. So I'm one of those folks that have the ability to flex back and forth, and I really like that because it keeps things interesting. I do some learning projects, I do some change management, some transformation, and just a little bit of everything. So that's where a lot of my experience has come from in that arena.
I love that. I think well, first as an independent consultant, one of the biggest perk is the variety of projects. And since you're certified in so many modules and also you do advisory and change management, I'm pretty sure you're not bored.
No, not at all. And so it gives me this kind of set of skills and experience that I think is a bit unique from other consultants who have a lot of
Yeah.
depth. I have a lot of breadth. So there are some areas where I jokingly say, I know just enough to be dangerous. But but what I have found though is that there are a lot of similarities across all of the customers and clients I've worked with on all the different types of Workday projects. And so, so when I think about change management and what I see, it's something that everyone struggles with.
Yeah. It's especially newer companies implementing Workday. I think most of the companies that I worked with, from scratch implementations, they don't think about change management until the very end. But the companies who succeeded their implementations the most are the ones who started early. So I totally get what you say. Going back to your very first job, was it a Workday job or was it a change management job that happened to be a Workday in the Workday ecosystem?
Yeah, so it was a change management job that happened to be in the Workday ecosystem. Prior to that,
Nice.
I had done change management for other types of technologies, but I was very eager to join the Workday ecosystem at that time. I'd seen in on social media and just industry that this was going to be the next big thing, a cloud technology. It's just funny to think that at that time, technology was such a new thing. And I wanted to be a part of that and really set myself up as an expert in some way. So I was very fortunate that I had that opportunity to join a firm that kind of encouraged and rewarded those who wanted to broaden, expand, and grow in their career. Um, so I came with change management experience, joined the Workday ecosystem, married those two very well together. Okay.
You said that you had to build the change management department from scratch, right? That was the your introduction to Workday. For companies with no change management department, what were the steps or the strategies that you took to build that practice from scratch?
Yeah, so I had the privilege of working with the director who had done that before. So I was very fortunate. He had a point of view that it is very important to when you're trying to sell change management, that you're selling something that feels tangible and that you really begin to focus on what the deliverables are going to be. Because when you say change management, people's like, yeah, we need it, but they feel like it's just warm and fuzzies and they want to know what they're getting for their money. And so I would encourage anyone who's, wanting to build this is begin to focus on what are those deliverables, right? Having something to show clients of this is what you're going to get. We often will have to fight against unrealistic expectations of what you're actually going to get. But I will say, begin to when focus on what are those key deliverables, set up a solid methodology, and don't overcomplicate it, right? In a lot of ways, you do want to keep it fairly simple and straightforward, and really think about change management is not just as an outcome, but as a framework, right? That's going to be repeatable, and it's something that you can, like I said, have something tangible at the end to show for. And so
Hmm.
that's a very important thing. One of the things that we really focused on was creating a library of examples. And customers really resonate with customers, right? Being able to
What is
see.
that, by the way?
So it was like
Library of
a
examples.
library of examples, like sample job aids, right?
Okay.
Sample deliverables. So one of the key deliverables in change management is a stakeholder analysis, showing someone what that looks like at the end of it, and then you can talk them through. Here's the process of how we get there. So having a proven process, right? And that's what change management is really. People tend to think that change management is an outcome, but really what it is a set um, process with a set number of tools that gets you to an outcome in a way that minimizes risk and minimizes disruption. So with Workday projects, the outcome is usually adoption, user adoption. You want them to adopt the system. So you want to make sure that you are creating a process that gets you to adoption. And what are all the steps that are included in that?
What I know, and again, I'm very limited in change management, but what I know about increasing user adoption is, all of these knowledge transfer guides and all of these sessions with leaders and employees on how to use Workday, and then step by step process, and the tasks in Workday. Is that change management, or am I missing some stuff? I feel like I'm missing a lot.
Yeah. So oftentimes people will just equate change management with training, job aids, and communications. But it's really so much broader than that. You really think when you want to think about change and how do you drive change and how do you drive adoption, it's really a multi-dimensional approach. So, for example, you have to think about the change that's happening at the individual level, and you also have to think about the change that's happening at the organizational level. And so, if we take a step back and think about from individual, sometimes that's going to require a shift in mindset, a shift in work habits, a shift in behaviors. And those are not the kind of things that you can change with just a communication. It's going to require sponsorship, right? It's going to sometimes require some one-on-one coaching with your manager. Accountability has to be brought into that to make that change from an individual perspective, as well as from an organizational perspective. You want to think about things like policies and practices and processes and culture, because all of those things are impactful as well. So many times I've seen where a company's policies and practices are not reflected into what's configured in the tenant. And what that does is just creates chaos and confusion. And it leads to clients saying, I hate Workday. But if you really peel that back, they don't hate Workday. They hate what Workday has uncovered in their organization, right? There are gaps in processes and understanding. There's misalignment, and it just creates, chaos and confusion. And so when we think about what are all the things that we need to do to drive adoption, we really have to think about all those things that create the work environment. And sometimes that's missed. A lot of times that's missed. And that leads to what I often call, very unrealistic expectations. And I'm going to give you an example of how I see that is, I've been into sales to service meetings, right? So the salespeople have sold all of this wonderful thing, and now it's time for the delivery team to take over. And they will say, oh, this customer change management is one of the most important things for them. But by the way, there's no budget for it, or they have a very small budget for it. They don't have any internal resources that they're planning to assign to it. They think that they could, hand over a small amount of money and then magically it's going to create this change or transformation in their organization. And it sometimes leads to buyer's remorse. And customers are like, well, what did I buy? And I have to explain to them what you bought were this number of job aids and this number of communications because you didn't really want
Hmm.
to invest in the things that would truly create change and drive adoption in your organization.
Got it. Well, as a consultant, then coming from the outside, and tell me if I'm wrong, your goal is to understand the process that they have today and then the future process that they'll be having using that system. In our case, it's Workday. But aside from the job aids, etc., what are the other sessions that you have with clients to fully understand what they need, and so that you have a last-longing impact, as you said?
Yeah, absolutely. So the very first step you want to do is you make sure you identify and understanding who are your stakeholders, right? Who's really
Yeah.
going to be impacted by this work. And then the next step is we start to identify what are those specific changes. So you're in an alignment session, right? You're in a design session and you will hear, oh, that's different from the way we do it today, right? Um, if you're lucky, someone will capture that as a change
Yeah.
impact and they will document it and you can track it. But very often it just kind of like gets left into the air, right? Okay, that's a change, but no one's doing anything with it and they assume that it's someone else's responsibility. So, even if you're a functional consultant or if you're a project manager and an engagement manager, helping to guide your customers and clients to say, let's make sure we're capturing all of these impacts that are happening. Then, as the change management resources and consultants, we're not able to take that and begin to create a strategy and a plan that addresses the gaps. So, here's where you are today, here's where you want to be tomorrow, and here are the things that have to happen in there. And that could be, yes, training, right? You have to train people on the system, but it also requires some other pieces. I call it anchoring the change. And there are four E's, right? That I like to say about anchoring the change. And one of those is expectations. Setting very clear expectations about what Workday is going to mean to a particular stakeholder group. I see this as a miss often with manager self service, right? Yes, we're bringing manager self-service, but we have you set up your managers to be successful with that, right? Are you incentivizing them? Is it a priority for them? Is it responsibilities that's going to get rewarded and get them promoted, right? So being clear about expectations and how you do that, and you may have to achieve that through communications and through sponsorship, but being clear. The second E is around experience. Are you making it easy for your users to use the system? Right? Are you
Mm.
adding unnecessary approval steps? Are you sending out unnecessary notifications? Right? What
Review
are the ways
documents.
you can make this as frictionless as possible for your users? Are you taking advantage of the tools that are built into the Workday platform, right? The user guidance workspace, help text, guided tours, all of those
Yeah,
things that give people the information they need to get their task done. The
but
third piece,
then
go ahead.
yeah, but then it's since you're saying that processes should be very simple and user friendly, etc. As a change management consultant, you're also collaborating with those functional consultants to make sure that those processes are as simple as possible. Do you, or is that siloed?
Well, we would like to, right? But again, very often, as you mentioned, we don't get brought into later. So all of the design
Yeah,
decisions have been made, right? And we're on the back end and we're asking questions. So why is it designed this way? And it's almost sometimes too late. They bring us in at testing. Well, we're far enough along that a lot of those decisions will have to either be optimizations or they just create a poor user experience. So ideally, you bring in your change management consultant early on. We're listening in on those conversations. We're listening to what's changing, and we're able to ask those questions and begin to challenge: is this really going to be the best experience for your users?
yeah. How early do you think we should bring change management people?
I think really at the beginning of the project. So
At the
really
very
at the
beginning. Okay.
planning, at the very beginning of the project, because you also have to remember that change is not just happening for your end users; they're happening for the project team as well. And are you preparing your project team to be on a project? Many of the clients either have never been a part of a project of this magnitude, or if they did, it was 20 years ago. And it's just a whole nother ball game, right? And so there is an opportunity to help bring your project team along and ensure that they have the tools and understanding that they need to make good decisions on behalf of the end users.
Perfect. Okay. I think just based on these few minutes, I think we anyone listening to this have a solid understanding on how to get started with change management. So I appreciate that from you, Tracy. Going back to the next step in your career, you didn't stop at change management. You said got learning certified, etc. Um, how did you plan this move? Since you came from a change management background, why did you just keep on doing just change management?
So I would say that I'm always up for a challenge. And there was this challenge ahead of me. I felt like that it would also help me become more of an expert um, in the tool. It gave me a chance to really, by stepping into that functional role, it gave me a perspective that I didn't have before, right? That I could now take back to change management and advisory. That just that understanding of all the things that go into a phase one implementation, right? Whether that's understanding what bills, what happened, understanding more in depth about the business framework, I really got thrown into security. And so by figuring out security for this specific domain, I'm now able to, understand how that affects a lot of things across, the entire platform. So being up for the challenge, being curious, being willing to try something new, not being afraid to fail. Those are all things that were really important into to me, in building a career.
Yeah. And I feel like because you had this experience in other modules, you're able to spot all of those change management spots to bring up to the client even earlier in the project. So that makes you even more valuable as a consultant. Tell me, how did you become independent? Why didn't you just keep working at partners?
Yeah. So about 2 years ago, I was at a
2 years
crossroads.
ago, okay,
About 2 years
nice.
ago, yeah, I was at a crossroads in my career, and I had an opportunity to really step back from what I had always known. Being an independent really had not even crossed my mind up until that point. But when I took a realistic look at what I really wanted in my next season of my career, I wanted to get back to what I call my North Star, about career. And what was important to me, and one thing that was has always been important to me is having as much control as I can over when, where, and how I work. And being an independent consultant just seemed to be a really good fit for what I wanted, in terms of that, as well as I wanted to build my own brand and own my
Hmm.
own intellectual property.
Oh,
So
right. I remember
exactly. So
you said on LinkedIn that you were building all of these resources, etc., and you'd like to keep them and use them for your clients. Tell me more about it.
yeah. So, when I'm working for a partner firm and when I'm creating something, it belongs to that firm, that intellectual property. And I still see deliverables that I created years ago still being used, still being sold by those partner firms. They're still making money off of it. I'm not getting any residuals from it. So I knew that by going out on my own, I would now be able to own that for myself, and then I can, in some ways, begin to profit off of that knowledge and my expertise for myself.
Exactly. Love that. How did you come up with the name of your company, Fruit Advisor?
So I've always been pretty fascinated about how do you bring ideas to life, and fruition is, one of those ways that we're able to. When you think about cultivating an idea, how do you bring it to life? And it just also fit in well with um, the kind of like the phrase that I have for my company is leveraging people power to bring technology to life. So that's how those two come together, because a lot of times we think that implementation equals transformation, but you really need people to really to bring about that change in your organization.
How was the first few months as an independent? Like, how did you get your first contract? How did you feel after leaving your full-time job?
Yeah, so it was exciting. And I will say that I knew going in there was a couple of things that I wanted, and one of them was I didn't want to just see myself as an independent consultant, as a contractor who trades hours for dollars. I really wanted to think about this as building a business, building a brand, etc. And so I went into it with that mindset, not really sure how that was going to work out. What I found is luckily there is quite a bit of demand in the market for my skill set. So finding those first contracts actually came very quickly. Just
Nice.
making
Okay.
connections, like the network. Having been in this ecosystem for a long time, right? You know people, you
Yeah.
build relationships. People have gone on to other organizations, and just beginning to reach out to those people I've worked with in the past really brought a lot of opportunities to my door.
Yeah, I feel like the longer you stay within the ecosystem, the bigger network you have, and people move all the time. So if you have a really good relationship with someone at company A, when they move to company B, they're more likely to bring you on and share opportunities with you. So yeah, you've been there for a decade. So I cannot imagine the easiness of getting those first few opportunities.
Yeah, I will tell you one of the first, contracts that I worked, that I got assigned to, the implementation partner was the partner I had worked with before. So I knew about 8 to 10 people on that project just kind of out of the gate. So that's an example, as you say, right? As people have moved around, as you build a name for yourself. So again, the work that you do, your reputation and your quality of how you deliver, people remember that. And that has also been, a way for me to continue to feel very confident about my ability to, continue to get contracts.
Perfect. And your feedback after 2 years of being independent, what's next for you?
So I have found that thinking of myself as a business owner is what I kind of think about next. Like really, truly think about what that means for growing a company. And so I made a commitment to myself in 2025 to focus on three strategic goals. One is growth. Right. I don't really have an interest in like growing a team and growing this big firm. I really like being a solopreneur. But what does that growth mean? That's growth in, maybe name and brand recognition, productizing, thinking about how I can take my expertise and turn that into a product as a way to grow. Another area that I really want to focus on is innovation. So when I think about how change management is packaged, sold, delivered, not a lot has changed in the past decade at all. And while the Workday platform itself has, continued to transform and, try to be at the forefront of technology, there's a lot of opportunity to provide innovation in the change management space, by leveraging the new technologies that we have. And then the third thing that I really want to focus on is being an employer of choice. And I know that sounds really
Oh,
weird, like as
nice.
a solopreneur, but I got this
Yeah.
idea from Melissa Lieberman, and she does a podcast for independent consultants, and she was talking about this, and I thought, yeah, I do. I'm the employer and the employee, but I want to create a work environment that I really want to be a part of. So throughout the years, I've been very fortunate to work with some really great teams, to work in some really great, cultures and work environments. And why not create something similar for myself? And so when I think
Of
about being an
course.
employer of choice, right, am I compensating myself in a way, right? Am I rewarding myself for good work? Am I providing
Yeah.
benefits for myself? Do I have the work-life balance that I really, really want? So those are three things that I'm thinking about outside of just delivering as an individual, as an independent consultant. How am I really starting to think about my business in a way that makes it desirable to work for?
Nice. I think it's the one of the first time that I'm hearing an independent being so intricate about their goals for the year. So I want to just congratulate you on that. I love that. Give me an example of you on number one. You said strategic growth. You're not interested in building a team. Being a solopreneur. There are many advantages of being a solopreneur. What's your strategy then to grow as a solopreneur?
Yeah, I think there's truly an opportunity around providing products, productizing, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times, consulting is very service oriented, but I have seen where you can create project products, right? And
Yeah.
and then so that gets me out of that wheel, as I said, of trading hours for dollars,
Hours for
always.
yeah.
Well, yeah, hours for dollars, right? Yes. And so, to me, I have to think a little bit outside of the box about growth and how does that grow. So, another way is I talked about is growing my name recognition. So
Hmm.
taking advantage of being able to be a part of these podcasts, like like this is an
Yeah.
example under my name, not in
Yeah.
my employer's name, right? So
Exactly.
um, those are ways that when I think about growth, I can do that as a solopreneur.
Yeah, you get your name out there. With so many expertise, do you present yourself to clients as a change management expert, or how do you introduce yourself to clients?
Yeah, I tend to introduce myself as a workday expert, right? I kind of keep it vague and starting to understand what their needs are. And so if I find that their needs are more around the people side of change, I would tend to then elevate my change management experience. Um, Generally, if they are looking for something, let's say in learning, I do those projects too. People are very specific about looking for learning consultants. I think there's a lot more demand than there is supply in that area. And so, I make myself available to that as well. But I generally just talk about Workday as a platform, as a business tool, and all the different ways that a client can leverage that tool to really gain that competitive advantage, right? To see that return on investment, to maximize the benefits, all the things that they say that they want.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. I think that's my opinion. I think when you have the opportunity, try to push that change management side of your business. When you have several services that you offer in your business, I think the change management one is a big differentiator. I don't see many people talk about it. So if you start shouting about this service, I think it'll do pretty well.
Yeah, I agree that, and so a part of that challenge is, getting them to think beyond just the communications
Yeah,
and training piece of it, and really think
true.
about there is true value in considering all of the pieces that's going to be needed to drive adoption.
Yeah. And so, Tracy, let's imagine a client is watching or hearing about this episode. How can they contact you if they want to know more about your services?
Yes, so LinkedIn is probably the best way. I'm on their LinkedIn under my name. I also have a page for my business, so that's another way that they can reach out to me. I have a website that lists my point of view on a number of these topics about how you can leverage people power to bring your technology to life. So that's another way to reach out and contact me.
Nah, that's amazing. And also, I'll share your LinkedIn URL and website on the description of this episode, just to make it a little bit easier for people to find you.
Yes, thank you so much. And if I could say something to the independent consultants out there about change management, and maybe you're maybe feeling like, what do I do? How can I do? So I have a couple of tips, if it's okay just to share a couple
Yeah,
of
of
things.
course. Let's
Uh,
do
you
it.
know, so one thing I want to say is keep in mind that, change, everybody is responsible for change. So even in an organization, from the CEO to the individual contributor,
Okay.
even if you're,
Wait, can I say something here?
yes.
It's so important, like that this first step, because I relate to it so much, because as I grew as a consultant, even my configuration now, I think about these things versus at first when I got started, right? Just from conversations with clients, they keep saying, okay, we'll need to tell managers to change that. Oh, we'll need to train employees. Those are just tips and clues that those are change management things. So I think keeping your configuration as simple as possible, I think that will help people like you in your job too.
Absolutely, right. And just bringing it up. If you don't see a change management resource on the project, ask the question. Sometimes we're there, we don't get invited to meetings. That's really changed a lot, right? So it's greatly improved over the years. But ask the question: do we have change management resources? Are we tracking all of these change pieces? Because you imagine quick scenario. You're in a meeting, someone brings up a data issue. More than likely, the engagement manager, project manager is going to set up a meeting to discuss it so that you can resolve the issue. A lot of times, when those issues come up with change management, they just say, "Oh, it's a change management issue," and leave it to someone else. But elevate that as well, right? Everyone should be involved in trying to resolve those issues as well. And then the third thing I would say to independent consultants who are functional is, be proactive. If you know you have a change management resource, reach out to them, particularly if you know you're doing something a little different that's out of the box, right? So I'm pretty familiar with the default business processes for a lot of areas. But if you know you're doing something that's a little atypical, let us know, right? Give us a heads up that this is a little different for this client. So those are some
Yeah,
ways that everyone can get involved with change management.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. I think I think you've shared some valuable tips, things that we do not think about as a functional consultants. So I really appreciate you sharing all of this experience, Traci. Thank you again for being a guest on the Ask an Expert podcast. And I hope to have you on a second episode, maybe in the future when your practice grows and you have even more things to share.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. I've really enjoyed this time.